In nature, there are many scary creatures. Fear is a human instinct. This is probably one of the insects that can most effectively drive humans insane because of the incessant, unnerving buzz they make, or because they keep circling around you, or even worse, the often heard news of people being stung to death by hornets. We fear them. But if you take the opportunity to observe them closely, you'll be rewarded with a fascinating look at life. I am a nature photographer. I record the ecology of wild bees and wasps all over Taiwan. Not just the honeybee and the hornet that are familiar to us, but various kinds of bees and wasps. To capture the most realistic pictures, I must get close to them, very close. You may think I'm crazy, but over the years, I've never once been stung by a hornet in the wild. I did, however, get swept into a war between human and hornet. Taiwan is a small island with a land area of less than 36,000 square kilometers. Although its area is not even 1/10 the size of Japan, the number of wild bees and wasps recorded here, 2,500 to date, is higher than in Japan. On the island, there are 260 mountain peaks that are over 3,000 meters high. With high humidity and precipitation, the climate here facilitates the growth of lush forests. From the coast to the mountain range, wild bees and wasps can be found everywhere. For people who reside on this island, their paths often cross the paths of these flying creatures. For those who research and film wild bees and wasps, this island is like a precious paradise. Apart from the honeybee and hornet, research on other bees and wasps is still very limited in Taiwan. Although there are many different wild bees and wasps, it's quite difficult trying to record their behaviors and ecologies in detail. This is a traditional Taiwanese farmhouse in the north of the island. Nowadays, reinforced concrete buildings are everywhere. Very few old farmhouses like this are left standing. The owner of this ancient house is already over 80 years old. He's always lived here since the day he was born, and he's always been aware of the existence of another group of mysterious tenants. Every year around the time of the Dragon Boat Festival, this noise will come out from the holes on this wall. Only in this month would it sound particularly lively, and never at any other time of the year. The history of this old house can be traced back more than 100 years. In its heyday, there were 50 people living in it altogether. However, year after year, people gradually left, leaving only the old man and his dog behind. While the number of its other residents, the blue-banded bees, keeps on climbing. Each and every one of these holes is a work of art by the blue-banded bee, and each and every one of them tells a story of the continuation of life. The blue-banded bee is quite different from the honeybee that we are familiar with. There's no queen or worker in its social structure. Every blue-banded bee is fertile. All flower bees are vegetarian. They collect and feed on nectar and pollen. Between May and June, alpinia and wild peony are in bloom, and they become the food source for this particular insect. Through vibrating its wings, a flower bee creates airwaves, which in turn facilitate the collection of pollen. After it gathers enough food, the blue-banded bee goes back to this tiny nest, in which an egg has already been laid. The bee stores the food in the nest and then leaves. There won't be any nursery behavior. After July, this swarm of blue-banded bees will slowly disappear. There are also other creatures living in this old house. This spider weaves its web outside the bee nests, waiting for the bees to fly into the trap inadvertently as they busily go about their tasks. The blue-banded bee always seems calm and composed. Before it gets back into the nest, it'll take time to give itself a thorough cleaning, perching on one of the twigs nearby. In other seasons, this old farmhouse will also be used by many other wild bees and wasps as a breeding site. I'm concerned that this wall might be destroyed by these tenants and collapse one day. The owner told me that he shared this place with the bees for many decades. In spite of being exposed to the elements, it still seems pretty sturdy. Other than digging holes in mud walls made by humans, this particular sphesid wasp chooses to build its lair in the open ground. This is a red-legged digger wasp. It has no trouble digging and building a lair. It only takes a little over 10 minutes. Then it drags a katydid into the lair, not for its own consumption, but for the larva after hatching. After placing the food carefully, it backfills the lair to prevent the food from being stolen. Then it flies out to hunt again. It's not always easy to dig and build a lair. The red-legged digger wasp will sometimes run into big rocks which refuse to budge. Then it must start all over again. A second katydid is brought back to this lair. The soil being backfilled a while ago needs to be dug out again. During the whole digging process, the red-legged digger wasp watches the ants' movement vigilantly. It must not allow any ant to get close to its lair. If a big army of ants showed up after being tipped off, things would get out of hand. Re-excavation finishes much quicker. The red-legged digger wasp puts the second katydid in the lair and backfills the soil again. To prevent theft by other creatures, it does a more thorough job this time. Its head vibrates rapidly to pack the soil firmly. After a period of time, and perhaps doused by a heavy shower, these layers will merge without a trace into their surroundings. This is a common mud dauber, which is often seen in human environments. Any nook or cranny, as long as it provides shelter from the elements, might be chosen as a nesting site. A mud house like this is especially built by the mud dauber as a nursery for its offspring. The time required to finish a nest depends on the distance to where the soil is collected. This mud dauber, for instance, is relatively close to the soil and can make a round trip with a mouthful in less than a minute. From beginning to end, building a nest takes about 30 minutes. From raw material acquisition to construction, this mixed mud building is completed single-handedly by the mud dauber. While waiting for the mud to dry, it then goes out to hunt. This is a jumping spider. It doesn't weave. It's also the staple food of the mud dauber's offspring. There's only room enough for one baby in each nest. After bringing the food back, the mother wasp will lay one egg in the nest. She'll then bring 4 more jumping spiders back. This will be enough to raise the baby. After enough spiders are collected and the entrance has been sealed up, this nest is officially completed. Then the mud dauber will continue to make another nest next to this one. If everything goes well and conditions are good, the mud dauber will build many similar nests nearby. Only death will stop its single-minded dedication. What's more, through its entire life, the mud dauber may never see its offspring. Some say that all potter wasps are master potters. Their nests are built with mud, but different species of potter wasps will make different shaped nests. With only 2 front legs and its mouth parts, this potter wasp has finished a nest that is shaped like a clay urn within an hour. It will first suck up some water to mix with mud before coming back to build the nest. As soon as the nest is done, it will lay 1 egg inside. This pink silk tree has attracted many moths to come to lay eggs. It just so happens that moth larvae provide a perfect source of food for hunting wasps. And because of the hunting wasps, the tree is saved from having all its leaves devoured. After finding its prey, the potter wasp injects venom to anesthetize it and then brings it back to the nest. This way, as soon as the larva is hatched, there will be fresh food waiting for it. The potter wasp needs to ensure the safety of both the food in the nest and itself. If it is even slightly negligent, the potter wasp might become food for other creatures. This potter wasp is truly a storage master. With delicate handling, it goes as far as stuffing 3 caterpillars into this tiny nest. Once the prey is safely stored, the potter wasp goes to get another mouthful of mud to seal off the entrance. Nest building is thus successfully accomplished. Much effort has been put in. Now the sun is set and the time is late. I feel that the potter wasp should call it a day. I do not expect to see it continue building. It works harder than I do. Seeing the potter wasp laboring so hard for its family reminds me that I too have a family to look after. I decide to go home first and return tomorrow. The following day, I go back to the site to find that the nest has morphed into this. The nest was obviously completed before. Why does it need another shield added on? Why the extra work? My question is answered a few days later. I begin to notice that there's a parasitic wasp in this area, and it's been circling around this nest with evil intentions. A battle has taken place between these 2 mother wasps. Every time the potter wasp mother flies off to get some mud, even for just a few seconds, the parasitic wasp mother will move in. A strange relationship evolved in nature is at play here. The parasitic wasp is trying every which way it can to lay her own egg on another wasp's prey. Now I finally understand why the potter wasp needs to put another shield over its nest. It's so that the parasitic wasp cannot get away with it so easily. Of course, neither of them will give up without a good fight. This is one of nature's containment forces, aiming to control the population of any particular species and maintain the balance of the whole. In Taiwan, we can observe a variety of architecture. In nature, we can also admire architectural works of various levels. Bees and wasps are born architects. They're smart at using a variety of raw materials from nature to build their nests. Different from the potter wasp, who builds only simple and uniform mud houses, this group of nature architects specialize in constructing mansions with plant fibers. Under this wooden open platform, I've made an amazing discovery. There are many paper wasps' nests here. The paper wasp is a 100% social insect. There's a strict hierarchy inside the nest. The queen is the center of power. She's also the founderess of the nest. She took the raw materials back in her mouth, built the nest, gave birth to the first batch of workers, which from then on started sharing responsibilities. This nest is quite new. Its scale is still very small, with only a few cells. After a while, these pupae workers will soon join the workforce to forage, build the nest, or care for the brood. By then, the queen's status will become more pronounced. Now the queen's only job is to lay eggs. Before winter comes, if all goes well, the number of adults in the nest will multiply. However, life is unpredictable in nature, and no one knows when misfortune will strike. Once attacked by its natural enemy, even a flourishing paper wasp colony could perish. Like this colony, which is now being violently attacked by hornets. A few days later, I return to the platform and find a swarm of ants busily moving food. Following their trail, I realize that the ants are attacking the paper wasp colony that I recorded before. This is a war between two kinds of insects. I watch the ants move the larvae away one after another. A few lone paper wasps try to defend their home, but in vain. There are simply too many ants. Under normal conditions, the paper wasp should be able to defend itself. However, after being intruded upon and weakened considerably by its natural enemy, it succumbs to the lesser ant. It only takes the ants 3 hours to destroy what the paper wasps spent an entire summer building. This is a world full of predators and prey. Spiders prey on bees and wasps, but there is a kind of wasp that specializes in catching spiders to feed its young, the spider wasp. The characteristic of the spider wasp is its very long legs and tentacles. This is a brown huntsman spider, also known as lagian. The spider wasp hunts it and brings it back to feed the wasp's larvae. The slender spider wasp single-handedly picks up the lanky lagian, demonstrating astonishing strength. After bringing the spider back to its lair, the spider wasp first bundles up the spider's legs for easier burying. Then it lays one egg on the spider's body and starts burying it. After carefully covering it with sand, it still worries about raiding ants. This spider wasp is indeed a mighty porter. It's able to carry back pebbles which weigh a few times more than its own body weight and continue to work a full day. I come back the following day, only to find the wasp is still working, camouflaging and merging its pebble lair with the surroundings. I'm intrigued by the spider wasp's seemingly endless stamina. Also, how can the baby spider wasp break through all those heavy pebbles? More than 10 days later, I return to the same site to find that the pile of pebbles has been moved and sorted, next to which lies a cocoon waiting for the wasp to emerge. The mother spider wasp has already removed all the obstacles for the baby, for whom a bright future awaits. Do you believe that the future of mankind can be seen in a single bee? Einstein once predicted that once the bee is gone, human beings can survive for only 4 more years. The question is, will the honeybee ever disappear? For humans, the honeybee has tremendous economic value. Royal jelly, honey, and pollen are all important sources of income for the beekeeper. The beekeeper takes his bees all over Taiwan, following the blooming schedules of different plants. It's a nomadic type of industry. The beekeeper checks on the beehives one by one. As soon as any abnormality is detected, it will be dealt with. The beekeeper's harvest is directly affected by the rise and fall of the bee population. During the beekeeper's lunch break, a swarm of Asian giant hornets come to attack the honeybees. The hornet attacks the honeybee to rob the pupae and honey in the beehive. Brave are these tiny little honeybees. Like kamikaze fighters, they charge the hornets one after another. If no human came to intervene, all the honeybees would be wiped out in a few days. Finally, the savior comes. This old lady lives nearby and is entrusted by the beekeeper to look after the bee farm in her free time. She's a real pro, as she's able to remove all the hornets in a jiffy. Though the massacre by the hornets was halted temporarily, a greater tragedy is on its way. On this day, huge numbers of the bees in this farm suddenly drop dead. The beekeeper is making frantic phone calls, not to call the police, but to arrange immediate evacuation by truck. The culprit turns out to be the pesticide sprayed by farmers. It takes a very heavy toll on the innocent bees that get contaminated by accident. Pesticide is the beekeeper's worst nightmare, and the most vulnerable time is during honey harvest time. If the bees are hit by pesticide, the whole year's income will go down the drain. It saddens me to see the beekeeper looking so helpless. Woefully, he says that at least the hornets kill his bees one by one. It's very hard for him to come to terms with a massacre like this and not even know who was responsible. We will definitely feel very sorry if the cute little honeybee disappears for good. But if the hornet were gone, would you feel sad? Filming hornets is certainly a risky business. Actually, none of the hornet species in Taiwan is known for attacking humans without provocation. But because it's hard to discern the range of the hornet's territory, every year in the fall, there's always news about people being stung by hornets. As I record wild bees and wasps across Taiwan, I've met a hornet hunter who specializes in dealing with the Asian giant hornet. He agrees to let me record the entire removal process. One day in October, I follow the hornet hunter onto some privately owned land in central Taiwan to remove a nest built by the Asian giant hornet, which is the largest type of hornet in Taiwan. Watching the hornet zooming in and out of the nest in such an intimidating way, I really can't say that I'm not scared. I once heard a hornet hunter say it only takes 3 giant hornets to sting a water buffalo to death. This speaks volumes about the danger involved. No matter how skillful the hornet hunter is, it's hard not to get stung. Yet they seem to have become used to the assault, and their bodies don't seem to react to venom anymore, as potent as it is. For them, it's just like another mosquito bite, another little prick. The removal process only takes 30 minutes to complete. He will then take the whole nest back for further handling. The pupae and larvae will be separated from the adults. The pupae will be used as a food ingredient, while the hornets will be marinated in hard liquor. Both are very valuable folk medicines. A lot of people certainly don't feel sorry to see the giant hornets end up as human food. A hornet nest built in the wilderness doesn't pose much threat to people, but if it were built near residential homes, that would mean big trouble. One day in August, I receive a phone call from lecturer Chun, who teaches at Zhongxing University. He informs me that a nest built by the lesser banded hornet has been spotted on the window of a residential house in Hsinchu. I immediately rush to the scene. What I find when I get there is this nest on the window, as big as a volleyball. It doesn't look that special viewed from the outside, but when viewed from indoors through the glass panel, one can watch the daily activities in the nest like an open book. It's amazing. Through the glass, I can safely observe the behavior inside a hornet hive. For me, it's the chance of a lifetime. After a few days, the entire residential community learns about the hornet nest. Taking the residents' safety into consideration, homeowner Miss Lai has thought about having the nest professionally removed. At the same time, she's reluctant to do so, respecting life. After consulting with neighbors, she's surprised to find that the whole community supports her wish to respect life. So the hornets get to stay. After all, the nest is still some distance away from where the residents carry on their day-to-day activities, and there's also a private vegetable garden to block the access. With Ms. Lai's decision to keep the nest, the community gets its own hornet eco-pavilion. In the hornet world, every hornet plays an important part. The colony is a tightly collaborative team. Some will forage, some collect nest-building materials, and some are in charge of housekeeping. When danger looms, all will pledge life to fight. After about a month, the nest grows to be as big as a basketball. Keeping this nest is like keeping the construction plans of a green building. The summer is sultry in Taiwan. Humans can only control indoor temperature and humidity through technology. These hornets use their wings. Like having the most magical electric fans, no matter what the temperature is outside, they can always keep the inside of the nest at a comfortable 26 to 28 degrees Celsius. To continuously expand the nest, the hornet must keep dismantling and recycling old building materials to gain room. The whole process can be observed in detail through the glass. Observing hornet behaviors becomes the latest pastime for the whole community. Many parents bring their children over to observe the hornet's life cycle. Miss Lai's home becomes a hotspot ecology classroom that she is very happy to share. A mother who sends her child to a nanny living in this community learns about the hornet nest. She begins to demand that Miss Lai remove the nest. Once again, homeowner Miss Lai is trapped in the dilemma between respecting life and taking safety precautions. Miss Lai continuously tries to negotiate with the protester, explaining the safety of the nest. She also posts signs and fence mesh to cut off the only path leading to the nest, to prevent children from intruding by accident. All these measures are taken to alleviate the protesters' worries, also to help the hornets get past the autumn before they leave here of their own accord. Unfortunately, the arrangement is still not enough to relieve the sense of crisis for many. One afternoon, a fire engine suddenly appears in the community. They are here to remove the hornet nest. Miss Lai happens to be out. After checking the location of the nest and a helpful explanation from a neighbor, Mr. Chun, the fire brigade departs. As things get slowly out of hand, the borough chief also makes an appearance, whilst Miss Lai invites, through me, a local wasp ecologist to speak to all concerned. It so happens that the meeting is held on Mid-Autumn Festival Day, one of the festivals most valued by Taiwanese for family reunions. Under the beautiful full moon, humans are busy having a reunion with families. But can the hornets in this nest still be with their family after tonight? Luckily, after the discussion, the protester seems to show signs of softening. Still, within that month, Miss Lai receives countless concerned calls, putting her life under tremendous stress. Meanwhile, after 2 months of expansion, the nest takes up almost 1/4 of the window, even covering the carved window bars, and the hornet population reaches its peak. Newly hatched adults chew through their white silk caps, sometimes with the help of the workers. It takes a while and a lot of effort to break through the silk cap. The newly hatched adult will first clean its own body and then get ready to join the colony, embracing the new world. Just as the new queens are about to appear, an unexpected episode happens at this most critical moment. On this day, a new road is about to be laid, and the new road will pass right in front of the nest. Will the racket of road construction disturb the hornets and drive them out of the hive en masse to wage a war in defense? Picturing that scenario really makes one concerned for the workers' safety. Surprisingly, the workers don't seem to mind at all. One of them says, "We come across a lot of wasp nests, but not to worry. If you take care, they won't bother you." It's the end of October. The weather is cooling down. Life inside the nest is changing as well. Nest building almost stops completely, with neither construction nor maintenance. The nest itself starts to show clear signs of wear and tear. The number of workers going in and out of the nest also drops sharply. All signs indicate that new queens have emerged, and this hornet colony is about to split up. The queens are much bigger than the workers. After mating, these queens will depart, and each finds a secret hiding place to winter. At this stage, the colony in front of us has successfully accomplished its mission of passing down its genes for this year. And the clamor for removal of the nest rings on. The protester continues to voice her unease and her determination to remove the nest through various channels. The police also issue an ultimatum. This time, Miss Lai gives in. Disruption to life should be minimal if the removal takes place now. At last, the nest is to be removed. However, it won't be done by the fire brigade, but by those ecologists who understand the hornet well. Miss Lai wishes to say goodbye to the hornets with goodwill. After all the hornets have gone back into the nest in the evening, the removal process begins. At the end, the remaining 40-odd hornets are brought back to the lab for research. Not a single person in the community has been stung. The pressure on both mothers is lifted, and all the disturbances caused by the nest are over now. How on earth should we humans live together with these bees and wasps? Today, the Hornet Ecologist's Lab receives a group of visitors who are not just afraid of the hornet, but also curious about it. Living in Taiwan, one needs to learn how to face these insects, because after all, they have just as much right to live here as we do. At this moment, this documentary of me chasing after the bees and wasps has come to an end as well. I know this film might not be able to change the way humans fear wild bees and wasps, but I do hope that it will help people gain more understanding and respect for them. They are just like us. All they live for is to raise the next generation and to pass down their genes on this land. Here is the home that we all share. It's not for us to determine nature's design. What we can determine is our own attitude. And if you are as crazy as I am, you'll be rewarded, like me, with more glimpses into the amazing bee mania world.